Hi everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the VR Hounds Podcast. I am your host this week, Bumble, and we're joined by a special guest, Eric from Survive Studios, and we also have Jade KVR and the Fish Stick with us today.
Hey yo.
So, Survive Studios is the VR gaming company that is behind the newly released game Kartong, which is this really interesting game where you play as a tiny little thing in this cardboard maze. And I played it when it was in early access, and I really thought it was a great game. It was like almost a horror game, but also like really cutesy and plays with scale really well. So I had a great time playing that game. And I'm really excited to have you here, Eric. So, just want to ask you a couple questions about this game to kick it off. What was your inspiration for this game, Kartong?
Yeah, so since we are a Swedish studio, there are some cool kids shows and things that they usually run on around Christmas. So we have like a calendar series of short films where many of them would have like these miniature cities or things like puppets, and it's kind of a cool thing, like with the Muppets and such shows, that you get a different kind of a world, and where something can be made, like handmade, it has a certain kind of magic to it. So we kind of went with that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the strengths of VR, is kind of like transporting us to these different worlds. And you guys did a great job with Kartong because it really did feel like you're in this like little cardboard world, and that's a really cool experience. Jade, I think you played it as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was really cool. Like, as you say, like being really small in such a big cardboard world. And then just going around the maze, like the gameplay as well itself was really different from anything else that I've played. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to playing the update. Going to live stream that this week, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You played during the Halloween event, right?
Yeah, so with the Pumpkin King, who, was super scary. And
Yes.
That's the other thing about it. I was quite, surprised that... it looks like super cutesy on the trailer, and then you jump in and it is kind of a bit terrifying. Because the cockroaches are super huge, and I hate cockroaches. And then I don't know, there's just this creepy atmosphere, like you say, Bumble. Yeah, but
the weird,
overall,
mechanical pumpkin man who hunts you down. Is he still in there, or is that just a Halloween thing?
Is it still in there, Eric, the Pumpkin King, or just for Halloween?
I think you can set the date in your Windows PC to re-experience it, but now we have some other enemies.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
I've only played it in the early access. I think same with Jade. So what new things got added with the full release of the game?
Yeah, so the first thing that we added is a big update to all the sounds and music in the game. And we also added 3 more map lists, so it's twice the amount of playable content than before. And we also added some new things, so you can upgrade your crossbow with different attachments. So previously the robots wouldn't drop anything when you took them out, but now you can pick up some coins from them and basically get a better crossbow.
Oh, okay, that's cool. And the sound design, even in early access, was really good. It really did a good job creating kind of a creepy atmosphere. So I'm excited to check it out and see all the new sound design and new progression system and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're gonna like the songs. The soundtrack is it really puts you in the mood that fits with the game. So
Yeah, I gotta play this thing. Yeah, I was talking to him before we started, and I was watching videos at dinner last night. I'm like, this looks so cool. I was at the bars, showing people, look at this game. It's in VR. It looks so crazy.
Yeah, it is really good. I recommend it. Yeah, I found myself getting a little bit addicted to it as well. Like, it's like once you complete like one maze level, and then you're like, I've got to go on. So it'll be really cool with like the yeah, with the to see the weapon upgrades and things like that. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the different levels, that'll be really exciting. So on a more personal note, it's pretty cool that you're a VR game developer and that you're here talking to us, and I just wanted to ask you, how did you initially get into VR game development?
Well, at first I was really drawn to the more immersive games. Like I started out doing things, helping out in the communities of like Battlefield and Skyrim. But then Survive Studios was doing like a final QA roundup for their first game, and then basically I was lucky enough to be able to get into that kind of studio and try the new hardware.
That's awesome. Well, thanks a lot for joining us on the podcast this week. I'm looking forward to hearing your opinion on these various VR topics that we're going to talk about.
Yep. I have one more thing about Kartong, a new feature that we didn't mention yet, but it's basically a kind of challenge map where you can take some photos from outside and put it into the game. So you can have your faces on the enemies, and you can put things like your channel banners on the house sides, or we have these kind of billboards as well that you can put some funny pictures in. So I think it's called Collabs, and you can check it out from the pause menu in the game if you want to see what it's like. But it's going to
really
be
interesting. That sounds like a super unique feature.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So definitely check out Kartong, guys, because when I played it in early access, it was an awesome game. I think Jade would agree with me, and now that it's a full release, it has more. It's like more feature complete and has some really awesome, unique features.
Yeah, I think we've actually mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast. Yeah, so we definitely enjoyed it, and we've also got a couple of comments from the chat, the cat. Hey, Fussy Kitten. It's my buddy who I play with in Rec Room. He says hello, and Tim says I love your channel, Bumble, and
thank you, Tim.
and Fussy also says I watched the gameplay from the game. And my first impression was just that it's very rich in music and SFX. Yeah, it's definitely got a really good sound design. Yeah, I think we touched on that. But yeah, so all good. And yeah, I definitely recommend as well that you check it out. Fish, get on it, download it.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear what you think of it, Fish.
Actually, I might just leave right now and play the game.
We also added something recently that even players who don't have VR yet, they can still play the game with keyboard and mouse and try it out. And that will also let some of your fans that are just simply viewers at this point, they can still play the same levels as you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good.
Alright, so the game is Kartong, guys. Definitely check that one out. Anyways, our usual question for the Hounds is, what games have you been playing this week? So, Fishstick, why don't you kick us off with what you've been playing this week?
I've been playing, what's it called? It's an Unknown Player Battlegrounds, pretty much, remake.
Oh, okay.
VR.
Oh, the VR version.
Stand Out is what it's called. Yeah, I've been playing the crap out of that. I've been using that little gun adapter thing I was sent and just, like, annihilating people. This guy, so I was waiting for him to come over this hill on his little motorcycle, and the guy is jumping in the air on a motorcycle. He has an Uzi in his hand, and he goes right over me and just was like, boom, 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 just completely takes me out. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And when you're dead, you can still talk. I'm like, dude, that was badass. He's like, oh, thanks. And he, like, took all my gear and left me there. Yeah,
so what gun attachment do you have?
It's called the VR... shoot. I forget the name here. It's been a while since I've actually talked about it. Here, I can show you here. This is just like
that's really cool.
It has a front end though, but it's just like kind of a pain in the butt to have to put your controller back in. But yeah, this thing is sick, dude. For like FPS games.
Is this the one that was in your video? It's the same one, yeah.
Yeah.
Video on it. I watched that. Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, it does. I've never used one of those, but I mean, I don't play that many FPS games, but it seems like it's like a massive immersion increaser, right?
Yeah, and like I went from like getting killed all the freaking time to like finishing in the top 5. Sometimes I won a couple of games. Actually killed people. It's cool. You can do that.
That is cool. That
Very
game
nice.
looks really awesome. I think that's an early access game, right? It's really interesting
Yeah.
to see it move along and progress. I know a lot of people are dying for that PUBG experience in VR, so definitely check out Standout if you're looking for something like that. What about you, Jade? What have you been playing this week?
I have been playing a little game called Island Time, which is basically you are in like an animated game. You crash on an island, and you're motionless on the island. Like you can use room scale, so you can use standing or seated to play it. But you're just on the island and trying to survive for as long as possible. So like there's a timer, and you can get like better scores, or you'll die and it'll be like you survived for 3 minutes and then you've got to try and kind of beat your score. So I guess you're playing against yourself, but yeah, it's really quite addictive because it's got like this little crab. I think it's voiced by Greg Miller. Yes, who a lot of people seem to be a fan of. I'm a little bit in the dark, but yes, so the voice acting is like superb, and yeah, it's really cool. So he like talks to you. I think he might even react to your voice. I'm not sure, because he seems to say things in a kind of timely fashion. But yeah, so he's there on the island with you, and you've got to basically craft items. So you've got things around you like wood. I think I had a couple of stones at the beginning, and then every now and again, so between intervals, a little package will appear mysteriously on the island conveniently. And yeah, it will have some more things in it, like another log or another stone. I got a skull at one point, and it came with a little magnifying glass, which I think I lost in the sand because I was thinking, hey, I could send out a flare or something. But yeah, so you just try and survive for as long as possible. And also the main thing is you have you're wearing a watch, which basically monitors your health, and you've got to make sure, like, of course, it doesn't get to 0. So it's like a little heart on your watch, and it depletes like if you don't like eat. So the main thing is finding food. So you've got like some fish around, and you can make a spear and then get a fish, or and you've got to cook it without burning it, otherwise it goes and then you can't eat it. Or without these seagulls, yeah, you also have little enemies that attack you. So apparently there's some more as you go further on. There might even be a kraken or something, because I see a little like the tentacles coming out the water, and I was like, okay, that might be the future if you survive for longer. I think the maximum I survived for was like 11 minutes, around 11 or 12 minutes. And there was also, yeah, there's coconuts as well in the trees. So basically, you just got to make sure you don't starve and survive as long as possible. But yeah, as you can tell, it can get quite addictive because you're just trying to beat your score. I would have liked to seen a global leaderboard on it though, so you could like compete with friends. But otherwise, definitely recommend checking that out. And I've also been playing an old title, The American Dream, which is like an FPS game, I guess. There's a lot of mini shooting games, basically kind of within the game, shall we say. So it's not like one overall big game. It's like lots of little mini shooting situations, and it's called The American Dream because it's basically set in like 1950s America, and you are like a boy. Yes, you're a male, and surprise surprise, like most of these games, and you go through your like life And so at the beginning, you're a baby. It's like year one. And, you shoot different things throughout the game, throughout your life. So I think at year 5 or whatever age you are, you're in the garden playing baseball and you have to shoot the baseball instead of throwing it back to dad, shall we say. But yeah, so it's like completing everyday tasks or just normal things throughout your life using a gun. So I don't know if it's supposed to be a comment on gun culture in America or gun laws. I mean, it's called the American Dream, so I guess they're trying to say something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've also got a lot of comments in the chat. So our Luna says hello from Puerto Rico. Hello. Cool
Hi,
face
Luna.
there. And we have Tim again, who says he loves VR and he's got a rock on sign. And I'm not too sure how to pronounce DJ Mandodo. Yes, that's a cool name. It says, what up, peeps? Shout out to the VR Hounds crew. Shout out to you too, DJ Mandodo. I'm going to get it at some point. And KHL Beat says hi. Hi, DJ.
Hi,
yes.
everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Cool name. So yeah, hi to the chat. And that's what I've been playing mainly this week. And also Rec Room. I've now got S rank on the Pirate Quest. I also played it with Fish, who jumped in late at night. I was actually supposed to be heading to bed, hitting the hay, but Fishy came on. I was like, oh, we got to play some VR. So, we went on a little quest, the Golden Trophy, and yeah, he hasn't played it for a while, so I think you were loving all the new updates.
I was, and I died a lot.
Yeah, and I think flying has also been added since Fish has played. There's a lot of things that have been added, actually, so if you haven't been in Rec Room for a while, I definitely recommend jumping in and checking it back out. There's a new quest, the Pirate Quest, which I still need to play with Fishy. It's quite a long quest, whereas the Golden Trophy is a bit shorter if you're just like half asleep. So we opted for that one, and we also checked out some custom rooms. I think that competition has just ended, and they had a competition for everybody to enter. I think they could win, I'm not sure if it was some Rec Room swag or a t-shirt and a Nintendo Switch. So a lot of people made some really cool rooms. I've actually got a video coming up on that. I've checked out some of the rooms. One of my favorite was the Willy Wonka room that someone made. I think that won a prize. I'm not too sure. I've seen a tweet saying that the competition results were out, but it was just earlier before the podcast, so I didn't get to check out who won and what happened. But yeah, people have made their own amazing custom rooms, so you can do that now too in Rec Room. I'm actually making one at the moment, like a cookie room, because I haven't had that Grandma VR series in the Wasteland. If you don't know what it is, there's some very strange videos on my channel. But yeah, so we decided to make a cookie room as a bit of a joke, a side joke from that. But yeah, so that has been me.
Okay, sounds like you've been busy with a lot of VR games.
yeah. With my Vive is still out of action, but I've been playing on my Rift and trying to catch up with all the new releases. There's a lot of things coming out at the moment, and Kartong was out as well, so I was like, okay, I'm going to play that this week. I thought I'll live stream it because I've already done one gameplay video, so do something a bit different with it and play it on the Rift this time, as I think I played it on the Vive last time. Yeah, so that will be cool. So that's coming up, but yeah, lots of gaming.
Yeah. So Eric, do you ever get a chance to play VR games, or is it all Kartong for you?
Well, I get to play them a lot, actually. I played mostly Kartong during the week, but now during the weekend I've been diving straight into Skyrim VR with all the mods and that. I made a thread yesterday on Reddit asking people what kind of mods they want specifically for VR to enhance it, and there was like 150 or 250 comments just lining up all the things that people are stumbling into with the UX and in such a VR release, and it's huge. So
yeah, Skyrim VR is what I've been playing as well. I'm just hooked on that game, honestly. Like, not many games can pull me away from Elite Dangerous, but I've been playing Skyrim VR constantly for the past couple days. In fact, I've been playing it so much that that burned through the charge of my TP-Cast battery. Every single day I had to order a second TP-Cast battery so I can keep playing Skyrim while it's charging. And it is cool that it supports like all the mods. Well, not all the mods, but most of the mods that Skyrim does. I also modded it up. And I am excited for VR-specific mods. Like, the one I'm hoping for is maybe a mod to replace the default skin controller while your weapons are sheathed with, like, hands, because it's kind of immersion-breaking to have the Vive controllers there in the Skyrim world.
Yeah, I really need to. I saw Eric last night. You said you were up all hours playing the Skyrim and doing all your modding.
I used to mod the special edition, actually, so I've been like in and out of doing mods for Skyrim before.
That's awesome.
So you're an old timer.
So you're planning on doing like VR specific Skyrim mods?
Yeah, or at least look into streamlining some of the things that players are like having trouble with, especially with the melee combat is kind of a bit flaky. So
yeah, that's really cool. I haven't actually checked out Skyrim yet myself. I'm not like, I have Skyrim. I wasn't like a big Skyrim fan, but I know that in VR, everyone's been telling me just play it again. You won't get bored of it in VR because it's on another level.
It really is. I mean, it does have a lot of issues. Hopefully they'll be fixed by mods. The melee combat is definitely one of them. I went for like a archery build because the archery actually feels pretty good when you flip on realistic archery. And also sneaking, you can flip on like realistic sneaking where you have to crouch down in real life or get down on your knees in order to sneak. And that makes it way more immersive. I like that they added some cool like room scale options into the game. I'm enjoying Skyrim VR a lot more than I was with Fallout 4 VR, so I'm excited to just keep playing that game, keep getting immersed in that world.
Yeah. We've got comments from the chat. Demo Poland says hi all, and DJ, I'm going to call you DJ now, says, damn, he's fixing stuff outside of work. Yeah, I was thinking that because we were just, I think we were just discussing the podcast, and I sent like a very like late message, and I was like, whoa, Eric is up modding at the early hours doing his Skyrim stuff. So I was like, wow, he's really deep in that rabbit hole. So yeah, I definitely, with all the hype you guys have, hyped up Skyrim so much. And I know Introvert's not here as well, but he's a big Skyrim fan, and he played it on PSVR and recommended it. I feel like I have to jump into that too this week. So yeah, you've converted me.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, it looks
lots of things
awesome.
Where in the regular PC version you would just like go or run past it, but in the VR version you're like taking it all in, and I even found some new areas in caves that I haven't even spotted before because the brightness is a bit different inside the headset, and you can spot a lot more.
Oh,
yeah, I've noticed that too. Like, you notice a lot more little details in the VR version because sometimes you just want to stand there and take it all in, just like look all around and see all the cool stuff all around you. It's a really immersive game.
Yeah, I often find that VR changes the game because, I mean, of course, you're in the game, and I love doing things like the melee combat, and it's like, as opposed to a lot of games on PC, sometimes I like go hard with them for a while and then kind of phase off into some other PC game. Don't keep the addiction, but with VR, you can get quite addicted to a lot of games because you feel like, yeah, I'm there, I'm doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, let's move on to another exciting subject, a little movie called Ready Player One. You guys all seen it?
What's that?
Yep.
What is this thing?
I went and saw it as well. I had never read the book, and I thought the movie was awesome, and it was a really cool representation of VR. I was surprised how similar it is to like our current VR. Usually, when they show VR in movies, it's like this super like abstract, futuristic thing, like full dive VR, where you're just like laying in bed and projecting yourself into the VR world. So it was cool to see it. Using similar technology to what we actually have today. What did you guys think of the movie Fishstick?
Oh boy, I enjoyed it. I've actually read the book probably about 6 or 7 times, so I was really looking forward to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was nothing like the book. And I think I tweeted this out after I saw it, but it was nothing like the book. But at the same time, they had little bits and pieces in there from the book that wouldn't really spoil the book if you haven't read it yet, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, and yeah, I thought it was kind of funny how they poked fun at the corporate fancy pants guy. FYI, friends, spoiler alert, we'll probably be talking a lot about the movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, you don't want it ruined, yeah.
Yeah, check out. Yeah.
Lots of spoilers.
Spoilers.
But how Sorrento had his little password, sticky noted to his chair. I just, thought that was especially being the networking cute side of things and doing IT and stuff. I'm like, that's just typical of big corporate boss fancy pants doing something stupid like that.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Jed?
Yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I have seen it in both 3D and since in 2D. I went to 2 VR events on the Thursday, the 29th. Yeah, I went with VR Oasis to a VR event at BAFTA, which is basically talking about the idea of having Bitcoin incorporated into VR games, which is another topic entirely. So I won't go off on a tangent. But yes, so they also played Ready Player One in 3D. And then it was played for us in 2D at Cineworld for a PWC event. Yeah, shout out actually to Bertie if you're listening, because he got us the invites. Yeah, Bertie from Virtual Umbrella hooked us up there. Yeah, so both events, they were networking events and launch events. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about there, different kind of topics. But the actual movie I saw in 3D that day, I didn't actually see all of the 2D version that day. I was like, okay, so I've watched the 2D version this week since. So it's quite nice to watch it and see how my thoughts have kind of changed, and also compare the 3D version to the 2D version. Overall, I thought the same as Fish. It was very different to the book, because I've also read the book, and I was like, yeah, it's a completely different. It's almost a completely different story. Okay, it's the same story, but the actual details of every kind of segment, shall we say, of the book have been completely changed. Some of it because obviously it's a movie, so I imagine, for example, the keys, how they obtain the keys, they've changed it from a kind of puzzle gaming kind of perspective to more of an action kind of situation with the car races and so forth. And that totally makes sense because it's a movie, so they always kind of do that. They want to bring some more action into a lot of movies, especially when it's appealing to that kind of gaming crowd, and you can do lots of great special effects. So I really enjoyed some of the things the race at the start. There was lots of different things I enjoyed, but at the same time, I do think the book was 10 times better. So if you haven't read it, do read it. It is top notch. I do think for someone who hasn't read the book, they probably will just enjoy the movie and think great movie. But for someone who's read the book, there was some disappointments along the way. I'm sure we'll get into that. I think Bumble has a lot of questions for us, but yeah, overall good. But the book great. We'll yeah, sum it up as that.
Okay. What about you, Eric? Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it with some guys from work. I think it had lots of action, and it shows the power of VR really well without having to just fool people with the full dive in 10 years kind of technology. It was very down to earth in terms of technology, I thought. So
Yeah, that's one of the things I really liked about it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff they showed was kind of like current VR tech, like the omnidirectional treadmill. That's like actually a thing that's out there now. So my favorite part of the movie was the Shining scene. I thought it was really cool that they dedicated so much time to
awesome.
one of my favorite horror movies, The Shining. I love that part. What about you guys? Fish, what was your favorite part of the movie?
Definitely like the big battle scene at the end, like when all the guys would find each other, and I really liked how, like, especially that the part that sticks out to me the most is the where those guys are running down the street and they're the actual, like, the Halo Spartans, you know, in the Oasis. And it's funny how, like, it shows everybody how they look like in normal life while they're playing, you know, in the Oasis. I've always thought that's been entertaining with VR today. It's just watching people, like, outside of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
What about you, Jade?
Sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed The Shining part too. I'm a big fan of The Shining, so yeah, that was quite a surprise. And it's not like heavily featured in the book it doesn't have that whole situation. That is just a totally unexpected part of the film. So there was a lot of like surprises, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. Yes, that would have to be my favorite part. And oh, I know what I was going to say. Out of the 3D and the 2D versions, I'd recommend the 3D version because the 3D was so good. Usually, I'm one of those people who prefer to see things in 2D. To be honest, I don't know if that's surprising because everyone thinks when you're into VR, you must be heavily into 3D, but I think that's a misconception. Yeah, so I prefer usually 2D films, but for this film, the 3D was just top notch. It blew my mind. Yeah, the effects were just amazing. I felt like I was kind of like diving in to the Oasis, diving into the screen. Yeah, and hopefully it will get more people to try VR. I do think as well, I mean, I've seen a lot of like criticisms of the Shining like scene, and I was like, that's the one I don't really have any qualms with. Because I thought it was like a nice kind of take on it, and obviously that's such a like iconic film of the 80s. So it was nice to see a bit of a different take on it and have it incorporated to the Ready Player One movie. It was like VR and The Shining, two things that I love brought together. So yeah, for me, that would have to be probably my favorite scene.
Yeah, love that scene. And what about you, Eric? What was your favorite scene in that movie?
Well, I like how they made like quick visual homages to other really popular things in the movie industry, because the book was a lot about like old Atari games, and it kind of went too deep for me into that kind of nostalgia. But seeing all the other like movie franchises and also contemporary game franchises in the movie was kind of refreshing, and I saw people recognizing characters and yelling out, "Oh, there's Tracer! Oh, there's someone else," that they remembered. So it was cool to have more of a like Spielberg balance of what they paid attention to in the movie.
Yeah, I loved all the different references, just like rapid fire references. I'm sure you could watch it multiple times, just pick up new things every time.
I'm not usually into like these kind of just play around scenes, like when they went to the disco, but in this movie, it had like the perfect amount of playfulness, and also it fit into the story at that point as well, and it fleshed out the characters. So I like the disco.
Yeah, that was a cool scene. We've got Kate Incarnate in chat. That's my girlfriend. She says her least favorite part was The Shining. She really hates horror movies. I have to cover her eyes during those parts. But yeah, the both of us really enjoyed that movie. There were some less than perfect parts, though. I particularly didn't really like the ending, how they got the ability to make up whatever changes they wanted to the Oasis, and they just decided to shut it down 2 days of the week. It was like,
Yeah.
you know, this VR has improved this kid's life so much, and then he becomes a billionaire and gets a girlfriend, and suddenly he's like, oh, real life is awesome. I'm going to force everyone to hang out in real life 2 days a week. That part didn't really make that much sense to me, honestly. What about you guys? Do you have any criticism of it, Fishstick?
Yeah, that part, now that I think about it, actually, it's true. Like, you know, how his life's improved amazing because obviously, you know, he has all this money, but everybody else's lives are pretty much the same. So taking that away from him kind of sucks. But honestly, though, like, I thought the scene where Wade goes to talk to Sorrento, you know, to try and make a deal with him to help him find the egg and stuff, they go into that in the book, like, so much more deeper, and it's so entertaining in the book because like Wade is like basically misleading Sorrento, thinking he's totally gonna, you know, join up with them and stuff, and he's giving him a tour of the facility and whatnot, and he's all like making like just really smart aleck jokes the whole time to Sorrento, making the whole experience super uncomfortable for the guy. And I just think they could have gone to that a lot more deeper, I think, in the movie. So that was probably my least favorite part.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, I think probably it was more that things were missing from the book that I felt should have been incorporated. So, for example, they all go to school, like, in the Oasis. I think it's on Ludus. Is the name of the planet. But yeah, so I was like, that would be really cool to show, you know, the other capabilities and possibilities for VR. Instead, they showed them in an actual school, and I was like, okay. We just read the book, and yeah, I just didn't understand like that backtrack, and also the backtrack of, as you say, Tuesdays and Thursdays, no Oasis. Like, this movie, I was like, okay. Firstly, I thought it was going to promote VR, and secondly, it's about like VR, and it's supposed to be like a positive kind of, you know, look at VR. So I was like, okay, why are we closing it down? That's just really sad. And also, there's a bit more focus, I think, with, oh, her name's just slipped out of my head. Artemis. Yeah, her character. On like, she focused more in the book about what she was going to change about, because we're obviously in this dystopian, like, I think it's 2045 future, and the state of the economy is so terrible, and they're all living in these like stacks. So she kind of was focusing on, you know, if I win, I'm not just going to do all the typical buy a new place, you know, get a better headset. She was like, you know, focusing on also the future for everyone else. And I think that was a loss. That bit of the storyline was lost a bit in the movie. I do think, as I say, though, the book might appeal more to, even though it is like a teenage kind of book, coming of age story, I think it might appeal more to adults who don't necessarily, who watch the movie, and because I've heard like mixed reviews, so I don't know, I suppose it depends. Basically, I think that the film appeals more to the teenage audience and will definitely be good for people who've like never tried VR. And some people I know I still speak to who are like, okay, is VR 360 video? Is VR Google Cardboard? So they have no clue, you know, when you meet new people and they're just like, VR, who? So I think it's good in that way, but in some ways it kind of like made the Oasis kind of seem like a negative thing, like, oh, we have to shut it down so that people will socialize. And I was like, that's not true at all, because you've got really social apps, like one that I'm always playing is Rec Room, super social. I've met so many people in there. We've got one in the chat, Fussy Kitten. But yeah, and that's like, you know, there's adults in there, like I play with people my age, but there's also like kids as well in there. So there's something really for everyone, I think, in virtual reality. And I do actually think it's more positive, because if you're at home, for example, and you have some free time and you're like, oh, I can just hop in, and you can actually be quite social. You know, it's up to you whether you play that single player experience or you can play something multiplayer if your friends have a VR headset. I mean, that might be unlikely, I think, because I know like you guys and VR YouTubers, I'm probably going to know more people to play multiplayer games with, and that's not the same for everyone, but they can jump into a lot of social experiences. And I've met so many people I didn't know anyone, you know, in Rec Room who I know now, and have a really social experience. So I was like, I don't feel like we need to shut it down to be social at all. I mean, it's the same as the internet or any other like PC gaming. Those people who are going to be completely antisocial and maybe sit in the basement and never ever speak to anyone and never have a social life and never even play social games or multiplayer games, and, you know, totally disconnect for every experience in life, are going to do that regardless of whether it's in VR, you know, with the internet, and we've got access to everything now. So I was like, I don't think VR kind of impacts that negatively in any way, and that kind of suggests that it does. I think if anything, it's kind of a positive experience. I think as well, I've met a lot of people who have like social anxiety, some kids who have like autism, and have found it like to be really helpful to be in VR. So I feel like it could have focused a bit more on that kind of the other positive impacts of VR, and not had that kind of negative ending where it was like, okay, I'm going to shut down the Oasis, and like you'd never seen real people before. So that was my least favorite part of the movie. Overall, good movie though. Just not quite for me anyway, as amazing as the book, because I feel like the book is a bit more in depth and touches on a lot more things. But obviously it's to appeal to probably more of a teenage audience, so I can see that in that way. I can't really fault it.
Mm-hmm. So Kate has brought up another important flaw in the movie in chat, which is, as we've seen in VR chat, if you give people the ability to make their own avatars in VR, a lot of them are just going to make anime girls, and we did not see any of those in Ready Player One. Anyways, what about you, Eric? Do you have any criticisms of the movie?
Well, I think they kind of missed out on the jousting scene with the undead lich or whatever. But also when they introduced Artemis, I mean, in the book, she doesn't really roll out the carpet for the protagonist as she does in the movie. And to have a bit more resistance between those characters and have them compete a bit more for the final prize would have made the movie more interesting, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it was definitely weird having them all be a team immediately at the beginning. I was just like, all right, well, there goes like half the plot for the book.
Yeah, there's supposed to be tension between the two samurai brothers as well. Mm-hmm. And I think something happened to one of the characters as well in the later parts of the movie that didn't really... it wasn't the same as in the book, and it didn't have the same effect. So...
Are you talking about the part where like Shoto sacrifices himself or whatever?
Yeah, I didn't want to spoil too much, but...
Yeah, I did find... I was actually going to touch on, funnily enough, the Lich King. It's funny that you mentioned that, because the first thing that me and VR for those of you who don't know, another VR YouTuber, but yeah, we both immediately said, like, the Lich King.
Yeah.
He'd actually seen it already the night before, but he was like, the Lich King, and I was like, the Lich King, that's exactly what I was thinking. Where was the Lich King? I feel like the Lich King is so iconic, and like we expected it to be in there. I mean, at first I was thinking maybe it was to do with licensing, but then I was like, it's Spielberg, so even though it's a really old asset, I feel like he would have the, you know, the connections, shall we say, to manage to pull that off. And also, I mean, the Lich King, like, is so iconic. Like, in games like Hearthstone, they even have the Lich King has come back as a whole expansion. And his character, they've done some videos, if you check out, like, Hearthstone's YouTube channel, that are just absolutely awesome. Like, that character, you can have so much, like, fun with it. And, yeah, it would have been really cool to have him somewhere in the movie. I kind of understand why they didn't do it, because maybe they're going for more of that like action with the racing, and so they didn't want to have a guy just in a cave like playing joust. But then at the same time, they could have had him maybe fight with the Lich King, or just had the Lich King come into it somewhere, or come into a different part of the movie. I just feel like the character was kind of iconic. And then, as you say, Eric, the tension between the characters, it was totally different, especially with Artemis as well. I kind of felt like, you know, she did roll out the red carpet. I found that she was not as strong a character. Like, I really liked her character in the book. And then when I watched the film, I was like, why do they always make all the female characters to just be like, I don't know, an aside to the main male character? Or they just like, I don't know, the relationship was just not as, I mean, maybe it would appeal, I don't know, maybe it would appeal to teens. I don't feel like any kind of even teenage relationships can possibly be that cringy. But it was just very like, she didn't have her own like voice. They made her a bit more timid. I know she has got a big character, but in comparison to the book, there was sometimes, I can't remember, there was just some bits of conversation that I was like, okay, I don't feel like she'd say that, having read the book. Also being such like a dominant character, I felt like she was just kind of like, oh yeah, you know how they work together. It was, whereas in the book she's much more competitive. So I felt like just because they're trying to bring maybe some romance into the film doesn't mean that they have to completely diminish the female character, as they do in a lot of these big movies, and make them all like, I don't know, pandering to the male character. I don't know, I didn't like that at all. I was like, that's not reflective of real life or of the Ready Player One dynamics between the characters in the book. It's actually much more fun if you have characters that are stronger, like in Star Wars, when you have like Princess Leia and Han Solo. That makes for a much better kind of chemistry storyline, and it's much more like true to life experiences, as opposed to just having the female be like, yes, we'll do what you say, let's work together, no competition. Yeah, so that was probably something else that I was a bit disappointed about. There's like a lot of disappointments. It was like, I don't want to discourage people from seeing the film, because overall it is a good like action movie, but it's like a good as a kind of stereotypical action movie, and maybe not as much depth as like one would expect if you've read the book. So there will be some things missing, I suppose, if you've read the book, that you might be disappointed about, whether it's the Lich King, the changes in Artemis's character, or something else that you might find. Or I know that some people really didn't like the new incorporations, such as The Shining at all. I think someone said in the chat, I don't know, the chat's going really fast, so and I'm just chatting away, so I've missed some comments there, so I'll have to scroll back. But yeah, that was my take on that. Bumble.
Yeah, I never read the book, but now I'm sad that the Lich King wasn't in it, because assuming you're talking about the Lich King from Warcraft, he's an awesome character.
Yes.
And I noticed
yes.
they, actually my favorite minor pop culture reference was that they had Tracer popping up from Overwatch occasionally, so they definitely had Blizzard characters in the movie. So they could have fit him in there somewhere. Shame that they didn't.
I think, like, with the joust, they could have maybe stuck the Lich King on a horsey and then stuck Wade on a horsey and they actually joust in, like, a big or something.
I mean, imagine if the race would have ended in, like, the floor breaking open, and then the protagonist would have found the ending of the maze at the end of the race, and then Artemis comes in with her, I think it was a motorbike, and then he would joust on her motorbike or something. That would have been cool.
That would have been epic. See, that's the thing, even though I'm saying it was a good film, at the same time, I'm not sure how many times I'm going to watch it. If it gets people into VR, that's great. And I feel like people who haven't tried VR are really missing out. Come join us in the Oasis. But as a film, I don't think I'm going to be super addicted to it and watching it over and over and over. It was just like, for me, just good. A good action film, but like, that's it. Not enough depth.
No, it had that kind of Spy Kids vibe to it compared to the book.
Yeah, it's funny because I was expecting, I think my expectations were super high though, both because of the book, but also because it's Spielberg, and like, I like kind of the old classics like E.T. I did think as well he'd kind of understand the character dynamics a lot more, and being a big fan of the book and kind of get that right, which I didn't feel he did. But like, you know, the way you have in Stranger Things, that kind of 80s dynamic, and yeah, you know, having done something like E.T., I felt like he would bring that kind of feel to it, but it wasn't quite there for me. I'm now getting more and more disappointed about it. I don't know. It's either going to really grow on me, or I'm going to go the opposite way and be like, okay, see it a few times and then be okay, I'm over it. Back to VR gaming.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's kind of like good, mindless fun, cool visuals and stuff, but when you really start to like dig into the details, you're like, maybe it wasn't the most amazing
how many
flaw. Like a lot of flaws in it, but I still liked it, and I think it's really cool that it represented VR so well, and it's kind of increasing the reach of VR and just like showing it to a lot of people, and hopefully helping sell some VR headsets. That's the other thing I really liked about that movie.
Yeah, it will really expose people to VR, because I think that the problem is that a lot of people just haven't tried VR, and I think I was saying in a previous podcast, I never see it, like, let's say at a mall or shopping centre for us. But yeah, so I feel like a lot of people need to try it, and seeing like what VR can be and seeing it in a movie will make people more aware of it for sure.
I like that they showed not only like the headsets and people going into the Oasis from there, but also showcasing exactly how the gloves and the omnidirectional floors added to the experience, because that's some things that it's already out there, people can try it, but it's not really something that the public expects developers and hardware manufacturers to actually pursue. But it's basically, I think they showcased the Infinideck,
yeah.
Yeah, Infinideck, and it's like one of the top-notch kind of Omni floors that you can try today. And if hardware manufacturers and software developers like game studios and so on, if they see that people are aware of this kind of technology, it encourages them to develop for it.
Yeah, so Eric, as a VR game dev, have you tried any of these like high-end haptic or locomotion solutions like the Infinideck or haptic gloves or anything like that?
I've tried one of these Omnidecks, and we have a VR arcade studio in Stockholm that's called Mission IX. Shout out to them. They have this huge, I think it's 4x4 meter floor with the rollers in all directions. And I've been experimenting some with getting the controls to port to our game Kartong. And it's quite cool to like walk around on the Infinideck kind of platform and get sucked back to the middle. So you can basically walk or even run on these kinds of bigger decks. I haven't
really cool.
tried any of the haptics, like gloves or vests yet. I think they kind of overplayed the haptic vest in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be like something that everybody actually wants, because it's VR is already quite intense, and mapping all these like collision and touching points onto the vest wouldn't be super accurate anyways.
Yeah, we've actually got a lot of comments in the chat. Ready Player One, it's a hot topic.
Yeah.
So we have got, yes, DJ also says he smirked throughout the movie and loved how well the movie portrays pop culture. Yes. Kate asked what was our favorite pop culture that got included, and DJ says his was absolutely all the 80s references and early 90s game characters, and yes, they played so hard on nostalgia. he almost died laughing at the Shining part. Yeah, I think that the Shining part, it's hard to say what my favorite part of the movie was, because then at the end of the Shining part, where she runs around kind of or like they have the axe just kind of running. They don't want to show like the main character because obviously they haven't got Jack Nicholson, maybe. And because he's so iconic, they just kind of have like that axe swinging down. I was like, okay, yeah, that's a weird take on the movie. I understood like where it was going. It was like trying to pick a favorite part of the movie. It's like visually, I really like the Shining part. I kind of like the race part. It's like I don't know what my favorite part of the movie would be. If I had to pick, that would be it. But then at the same time, I really hated the way that Shining part ended. So I feel like I'm so critical of each part that it's like hard to pick what my favorite part was. Maybe my favorite part would probably be Wade in the trailer, just running around on his a treadmill and like putting his headset on, and it was like, yeah, into VR, just that like 2 seconds. But yeah, we've also got comments. Yeah, true about the anime avatars, as you said. Yeah, Bumble. A lot of funny comments about that. Yeah, VR chat definitely has a lot of that going on. It can be very strange in there. And yes, I'm just scrolling down. Yes, more avatars, lots of funny comments. The Spy Kids vibe, yes. Yeah, they're the comments. So hi to everyone in the chat. I'm just trying to catch up on all your thoughts about Ready Player One. But yeah, it's great having you here and seeing what other people thought. Super funny.
Yeah.
I liked how they made the avatars kind of show how they wanted to express the characters. If they could just look like how they wanted, because that's one of the things that we try to do as game developers, is to like characterize certain personalities into characters and make them like appealing in a way for players to explore and to express themselves with. So like all the things they did with changing the hairs and the colors and the clothes.
Yes, yeah, I suppose that makes, yeah, if I was going to pick a favorite part, it was more things like that were more, having a favorite part is very hard, like having one scene, because you can always find like things about it that you didn't like or comparisons to the book. But yeah, as you say, Eric, you've named a lot of like key things there that are kind of in VR already, and then yeah, seeing them in a movie, that was probably the best kind of experience of it. That's probably what made it kind of appealing, even though I read the book and yeah, found some flaws, but then I was like, yeah, that overall feeling of like how they were showing what VR is currently, and that was nice.
Yeah, definitely. The way they did avatars was really cool, and I think that's something that's missing from a lot of VR games, where you're just like invisible body and just floating hands, especially like Skyrim. That was one of the big flaws in that game, where like in the original Skyrim on the PC, you can always be playing dress up with your character and like, oh, this armor looks so cool, I'm going to use it. And when you have no body, like that whole aspect of the game is just gone. And so I do think avatars is a really important challenge in VR that kind of needs to be overcome by some game developers.
So in Skyrim, I haven't played it yet, so in Skyrim you can't customize your avatar in the PC VR version?
You're just the invisible body in the VR version, so customizing it doesn't really do anything.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. But yeah, Ready Player One, I just loved seeing all the different VR tech in that game, or in that movie. And one of the interesting ones was near the end when they were like hanging from ropes. I thought that would actually be pretty cool for like a zero gravity game like Lone Echo or something like that. If you were like suspended and playing a zero gravity game, that'd be pretty fun. But I don't know how useful it would actually be in just general VR use.
Well, obviously, if you're getting chased down a road by bad guys, Bumble, that's
yeah, true. If you're in a moving car, then it's pretty useful.
That happens to me a couple of times a week, so.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting that they exclusively used haptic gloves, and they did not seem to have like just generic hand tracking, because that seems to me like one of the next big innovations in VR is just going to have your hands tracked and be able to use them naturally in VR games, as opposed to haptic gloves. Although I could see the advantage of haptic gloves as like making it feel more realistic when you're like holding objects or like swinging a sword or something. They really didn't get into a lot of the like nitty-gritty details of VR combat. Like, how did they make melee combat feel good in the Oasis? Was it from the haptic gloves? Maybe, but who knows? I guess it's just a movie, so they probably didn't actually figure that out. But I did think it was really cool, and it is just like a good kind of ambassador for VR in general. I hope a lot of people watch that movie and then go, oh, I really want to play VR, and then they hop into it and start playing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the main detail about the haptic gloves? Is it that when you're touching a virtual object, there's some kind of surface that will put pressure
Actually,
on that point in your glove?
I saw a video on it, then they went super in depth about they actually use these little they have these little bladders that are on the fingertips, and there's this little pump that basically will fill it with air on the certain wherever you're touching. And then let's say if you're like grabbing an object like a rock in VR and try to squeeze it, they have this force feedback technology on there. There's there these little bars that kind of follow where your your appendages go on your fingers, and it'll actually cause your tendons to like tighten. They were trying to mimic basically what the human body does whenever it grabs an object. Yeah, so if they had these little demos that they were doing, and so in VR, this guy was trying, crush a rock and stuff, but these force feedback things were making it feel like, there was that tension there or whatever. So it's really cool. I thought it was like electronic or whatever, like they put little electrical impulses and shock your fingers, make you think you're touching stuff, but I don't know a lot about that stuff. So it was really neat to get some perspective on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, because that's one of like the challenges in VR when you're grabbing an object, but I mean, you're not actually grabbing anything, so it doesn't really feel realistic. So if they could emulate that feeling, then that would be super immersive. I really want to try that now.
Except Oculus already did it with their grab buttons.
Oh yeah, true. The Oculus controllers are amazing, especially compared to the Vive
And
controllers.
Skyrim didn't use the grab buttons to pick up stuff. So it's yeah.
Another one of those little issues with Skyrim. Maybe it can be fixed by mods.
It's like one button for a unique thing, and none of the buttons are mirrored in any way. So it's really complex to map out all the functions of the game.
Yeah. On the Vive, you have to like press the center of the touchpad controller to pick stuff up, which is really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, guys, we are at over an hour now. Spent a lot of time talking about Ready Player One. I'm glad that you guys have such heated opinions about it. And I think that's going to be it. I want to just thank everyone who came to chat, especially Kate. And
hi, Kate.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Eric, so much for coming and sharing the perspective of a VR game developer. It was really interesting to talk to you. And I hope you guys have a lot of luck with Kartong, because it really is a great, immersive, and unique game. So once again, guys, Kartong is a game where you play in a like miniature cardboard world. You solve puzzles, you try to solve mazes, you use a little like pin shooting gun to kill robots and enemies, and now you can upgrade it and stuff. It just came out of early access, so definitely check that game out. I highly recommend it. Jade, you've also played it. I assume you recommend it as well.
Recommend it. Yeah. Highly.
Yeah.
Grab
thanks
it.
for having me.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll actually be live streaming it this week. Yeah, so stay tuned if you want to see some more like full release gameplay.
All right, awesome. Definitely check that out. All right, thanks a lot, guys, and that is going to wrap up the show. So, VR Hounds out.
Woof!